Welcome to the show. It's time to dive in. Talking sports with Evan. Let the fun begin. From the Brewers to the Packers, we cover it all. Wisconsin pride, we stand tall. The baggers on the field making history. With every touchdown, it's a victory. From Camp Randall to the court, we cheer loud. Wisconsin sports, we make our state proud. Feel the energy, the passion in the air. Join the conversation, we got stories to share. From the Bucks' big wins to the Brewers' great plays, we'll keep you entertained through all the games. Talking sports with Evan, it's where we belong.
Good evening. Happy Monday. It is a Monday edition of Talking Sports with Evan. I'm obviously Evan Wittalis, and it's my show. It's named after me. Of course, it's Evan. So I am Monday edition for a couple reasons. And as you can tell, the main topic of today is going to be a lot of Packer chatter. But going live today for a lot of reasons. With high school football starting up this week, I am a high school football official, so I will be officiating couple days this week, going to the Brewer game tomorrow, have our meeting on Wednesday to get ready for the high school football season as officials this coming Wednesday. So Monday, really the only day that work, plus have a special guest coming on at about 6 o'clock. You see him at every Packer home game, away game, training camp, practice. You've seen him in the locker room. You've seen him, heard him on the radio. He's with NFL Radio, Wisconsin Radio Network, The Bill Michaels Show, WRJN, and Civic Media. Mike Clemens is scheduled to appear at about 6 o'clock tonight, and he's going to get you all up to speed on the latest going on at 1265 in Green Bay, Wisconsin, and get you the latest on what's going on with the Green Bay Packers. The majority of the show is going to be Packer-centric, with or without Mike Clemens. When he comes on, obviously, we're talking Packers. Before him, we're talking mostly Packers. And Packers had their first preseason game of the season last Thursday. Haven't had a chance to talk to any of you all since then, but they did have their last game on Thursday, another game coming up on Friday, and there's just a few things I want to address that came out of both the game, excuse me, and post-game. So that's where I'm going to start with too. You can watch the show live every week on YouTube and Twitter. Twitter, it's at Evan with Sports. On YouTube, it's Talking Sports with Evan. And you can also text the talk and text line 414-454-9771, or just put a comment on the video if you're watching live. You can also listen to the show wherever you get your podcast starting tomorrow at 8 a.m. Spotify and anywhere else. It's Talking Sports with Evan. Sorry about that. So, be welcome to like, follow, subscribe, whatever you want to do. And you can find the show on Facebook. I don't go live on Facebook anymore, but you can also find the show on Facebook too. Talking Sports with Evan. So I will post the video clips from it. I will post the links to the YouTube channel and other stuff that goes on in the world of sports. Just like I said, I don't go live to Facebook anymore because Facebook flagged a show a while back and was like, yeah, this is copyright infringement, or I'm violating copyright policy. At the end of the day, it's my show. It's royalty-free music. So I don't understand where the issue came, but, whatever. But talking Packers, though. And before Mike comes on and joins us, a couple quick things I want to touch on from the Pittsburgh game. The good. Well, Trace Mack, who we all know was struggling to make picks in practice, talking about practice, he ended up going officially on the score sheet 3 for 3. But he ended up going 4 for 4 with a field goal that was taken off the board due to a penalty by the Pittsburgh Steelers. So Smack and unofficially 4 for 4 on kicks made, which is great to see. You know, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what you do in practice; it's what you do in the actual game itself, and that goes for every position, not just the kicker. It depends on. It matters what you do, and practice does have an importance. So I don't want you to think I'm talking bad about practice, but it doesn't really matter at the end of the day if you can't perform on the field Saturdays, Sundays, Fridays, whenever your particular team's playing. You have to be able to perform on the field of play in a live game. And Trace Mack was able to do that, going 4 for 4, officially 3 for 3 on the night. And two of those 4 kicks were 58 yarders, 57 and 58 yarder. I think the 57 was the one taken off the board, 58 right before halftime. And other significance about that, if you go back to January when the Packers lost to the Chicago Bears in the playoffs, the turning point to me in that game was right before halftime. The Packers ran Brandon McManus out there right before halftime, 50-some yard, 55, 56, whatever yard field goal that would have gave the Packers a 24-3 lead. Yes, the Packers still could have collapsed. Yes, the Packers still could have ended up losing the game like they did. But I feel that missed field goal at 21-3, left that door open just a little bit. It sent the Bears into the locker room feeling good about themselves. Something they were not able to do that entire first half of that game. They were not able to feel good at all about themselves. Well, that missed field goal gave them something to hang their hats on, feel good about, come out of the locker room a little bit more something. If McManus nails that field goal, I think the Packers end up winning that game, honestly. I think that would have been the nail in the coffin. Instead, it left that door open just a little bit, and we know what happened. Well, Smack nails one right before halftime. Obviously, it's preseason. It doesn't really matter at the end of the day. He has to do it during the regular season. But I think the fact that Trace Mack could do it in a game situation is a good sign. And I'm not saying the problem's solved. I'm not saying he's going to be the next Ryan Longwell. He could still be the next Andrews Carlson. But I think it's a move in the right direction. I use Longwell intentionally because I know Longwell has worked with him a little bit during this past offseason. But that's one of my biggest takeaways. Other takeaway, Jordan Morgan played well. I saw the game live, and then I saw somebody posted, some of these Packer content creators are psychos. Like, you went and posted every snap a player played in a preseason game, which I enjoy because it gets me more content to absorb and more talking points. But I just couldn't go back and rewatch a preseason game and pull up all these clips. But Jordan Morgan played well. I rewatched every single one of his clips. He had one bad rep, in my opinion. Run blocking, he was physical at the point of attack. Pass blocking, he kept his quarterback clean. And I thought Jordan Morgan played really well. And he started out the game playing against a legit NFL pass rusher. It wasn't like he was going up against myself and guy down the street. He was actually going up against NFL pass rusher and Highsmith. And he held his ground pretty well. It wasn't TJ Watt, which I would have liked to see him with a couple reps of TJ Watt, but it is what it is. The starting defense, like the first unit that was out there, they did pretty well. And Gannon tipped his hat and showed some exotic looks and blitzes early on, but they did pretty well. Bretton Cox had a sack. Lucas Van Ness had a sack. The Packers defense got after the quarterback, made him uncomfortable, and they bent a little bit, but they didn't break. They ended up getting a fourth down stop in the deep and Packer territory that got the Packers the ball back. Now, there are some things that weren't as good. The number 2 quarterback in Tyrod Taylor, he didn't look good at all. The number 3, number 4 defenses didn't look good. And I know a lot of the guys that played in the second half on Thursday are likely not going to make the team, but those guys are your depth pieces. Those are guys that may get into games on occasion to spell your starters. You're not going to be able to play your starting 11 for 60 minutes every football game. You're going to have to rotate guys in and out. And the guys that came rotating in later in that game, other than a couple guys like Naylor, didn't really look very good. And Packers got the work cut out for them. Starters, like I said, I think the starters look good, but the backups definitely could have the work cut out for them. The offensive line, still a work in progress. I don't understand. I'm going to ask Mike when he comes on what is going on, what his thoughts are with Belton. But Anthony Belton went from your starting right guard last year to not even really in the mix anymore. He's looking like he's going to be your number 3 tackle, which I don't know how I feel about that. John Williams is another one that looks like he's going to be your potential swing tackle as well. But there is a lot that to digest from the first preseason game and a lot to not really overreact about. And don't look at the score. 28-9 doesn't mean jack. It was preseason, and it was just guys getting some reps, getting some live game action. The coaches getting an idea on, who might be ready for the part and who is probably not going to make the team. And they already did release their number 4 quarterback, McCord. I thought McCord played well. I saw some people not very happy with him on social media, but I thought McCord played pretty well. Now, the processing could be a little better, but overall, he played well, and he slung it around, moved the ball. Obviously, they had to kick field goals, but I felt he did pretty well, and tip my cap to him. He did his job. He did his job well, in my opinion, and at the end of the day, I think McCord could definitely, be your practice squad quarterback. I don't think he beats Tyrod Taylor out for the 2 job, even though I'm not very impressed with Tyrod. I don't think he wins that job, but I think McCord could be your practice squad quarterback who you could bring up late in the season if you've already, clinched a playoff spot. And I know that's ultimately what the Packers want to do, because winning the division is priority number 1 in 2026. Other guys that looked impressive, Brandon Cisse continued to look good. I know he only played a handful of snaps on Thursday, but he wasn't afraid to get in, throw his shoulder in there to get some tackles. And he looks like he belongs on an NFL field. And again, I know it's preseason. He wasn't going up against DK Metcalf, but he looked like he belonged. Jaeger Burton looking like he could start potentially at left guard if Banks doesn't get on the field pretty soon. I know he's dealing with tendonitis in his knee. And then Chris McClellan, he has some upside too. Disappointed I didn't get to see Danny Dennis Sutton. He didn't play, and Damani Jackson out of Alabama didn't play either. Those are 2 of the draft picks that I'm hoping to see play this coming Friday. Obviously, I can't see the game live or most of it live, but I will watch part of it when I can, and I hope to see those 2 guys put on a Packer uniform on Friday and get on the field as well. So those are just some of my general thoughts. What are your thoughts? Do you have any questions that you would like to ask Mike Clemens when he joins us? He will be joining us shortly. Any questions for him? You can text the talk and text line 414-454-9771. You can also comment on the video on whatever platform you're watching this on, either on Facebook, not Facebook, scratch Facebook. I keep saying Facebook, either on YouTube or Twitter. You can comment on the video and I'll get those comments as well. And I can ask Mike those questions too. But I think one of the things that I'm really interested in too is Keyshawn Nixon. He talked about how he's apparently being punished, but I like the fact that he has to earn his job. I like the fact that he has to fight for his position. He's not just being handed the starting corner position. He has to earn it. St. Juice and Cisse and him are rotating in. More St. Juice and Nixon are rotating, but they're having to rotate in for to get first team reps. And I don't practice first team reps, second team reps. Doesn't really matter. Push comes to shove. He's probably going to be the starting um, corner week one at the end of the day, as much as he probably shouldn't. But I appreciate that they are making him, to me, look like he has to earn it. And his comments, they are what they are. He has every right to say what he's got to say, but the gist I'm getting, he sounds like he is fighting for the job and he's willing to fight for it. And I didn't like his effort on Thursday. I hope he watched the game film from Thursday and was disgusted by the effort that he put in on his few reps that he played on Thursday. I hope he watched that and was disgusted by it, and hope he has some pride and plays with a chip on his shoulder to try to, fight more for that position. But I like LaFleur's talking about you got to be willing and able to tackle if you're going to be on the field as a corner. Cisse has no problem doing that. St. Juice doesn't seem to have a problem doing that. Keyshawn Nixon depends on his mood. And Carrington Valentine, as much as I like him in coverage, he is not a tackler whatsoever. So he's going to have to really fight to win that position battle. But something that Damani Jackson, the rookie out of Alabama, does enjoy doing is tackling. But we hope Bollard's back soon. He's been dealing with foot issues, been in a boot off and on. But it'd be curious to see what the two outside corners look like, because I think it's pretty obvious. It's not pretty. It is obvious that week one, Xavier McKinney, Evan Williams are your safety. Bullard is your nickelback, and then the outside guys is going to be the question. And I think Cisse is definitely earning the right to be one of those outside corners for the Green Bay Packers come week one against the Minnesota Vikings. And that's going to be a challenge. Justin Jefferson, he's one of the best receivers in the league for a reason. And that's why I think Nixon ends up being out there week one, too, as a starter, because you really want to put St. Juice out there, too, with a rookie. Jordan Atkinson's a pretty good wide receiver as well. The Vikings got a pretty good defensive backfield that you really want to kind of be careful on how you attack. So we are waiting for Mike to jump in. Should be jumping in any moment now. He's supposed to join at 6 o'clock. Mike Clemens from NFL Radio. Wisconsin Radio Network and Bill Michaels Show and WRJN. And here is Mike Clemens joining us. And how you doing, Mike?
Good, Evan. How are you?
I am doing well. I appreciate you jumping on to talk some Packers with me. I know you're all over the team every day, all day, and appreciate you coming on to get your perspective on what you're seeing during training camp and in Pittsburgh this most recent game.
Sure.
So I know you got some time. You have to get out of here by a certain time, but I guess start right away with Keyshawn Nixon is kind of who I was talking about before you jumped in. It sounds like from what the coaches are saying and what I've observed, he seems to be in a bit of a position battle for that number one corner. I still think he ends up starting week one against Minnesota, but what are your general consensus with Nixon? Is he legitimately in a position battle?
Well, it started when we noticed that he was starting to run with the twos and then sometimes the threes. And you're seeing Cisse and this Benjamin St. Juice, 28 years old today, picked up in free agency off the Commanders. And then you just begin to think like, there's something going on there. What really sparked it was Sunday morning. We were talking to Matt LaFleur about that position, and he kind of threw out something that he rarely does, where he just said, Oh, I actually was indirect, but it was like, well, what are you looking for at the cornerback position? He says, well, we need guys who can step up there and stop the run and follow their assignments. And I don't think he was talking about rookies. I think he was talking about 25. Um, there was an incident last year when the Packers were playing the Bears, and the Bears came back with 23 points at the end of the game to win. Where the Packers defense had stopped Caleb Williams and the Bears offense on a fourth down, and there was kind of a pile of players from both sides, and they're getting up, and at the last second, in comes this blur, kind of just jumps onto it, like jumping onto a pile of leaves or something, and that was your veteran defensive back Keyshawn Nixon. And there was a guy that was part of the Packers staff who happens to be the general manager who went bam on the desk in the press box. Like, what are you doing? And here's a guy who can make these brilliant plays, interceptions to shut down the Bears, consistently, some pretty good coverage, and then just to do a juvenile, boneheaded celebratory thing like that, which cost them 15 yards and got to get the Bears back the ball. That's the kind of thing that they're talking about in terms of that next level of maturity, and yet Keyshawn Nixon is a solid football player. Rich Bisaccia loved that guy. As a matter of fact, it was even Keyshawn Nixon who brought up, like, Matt LaFleur's known me since I was a kid, which reminded me in Matt LaFleur's timeline of his NFL football career, there was one year where he was out of the NFL as a rising assistant and worked for Notre Dame and was out scouting players and met this Keyshawn Nixon player as a kid because he thought he stood out. So, Keyshawn says, LaFleur's known me for a long time, but I think it's okay. It kind of breaks out of LaFleur's shell to sort of call this player out. There's only one other time, Evan, I can think that that's happened in recent years. And it was when the offensive coordinator, Adam Stanovich, and we were talking about, with the loss of Bakhtiari, who are the candidates for the important left tackle position. And Yash Nyman was a guy that they'd brought along for a year or two. You remember him, right? Which I believe I just saw he recently retired after trying to catch on with another team or two. And it was Adam Stanovich, the offensive coordinator, who we said, what are you looking for from Yash? Because he was sort of kind of on the bubble. At
Everyone
that,
just assumed he was going to get the job at one point when
yeah, yeah.
play.
Size, experience, the opportunities he had, and filling in at right tackle, for a while. And Stanovich just said, yeah, we need to see more consistency there. And I can't remember the exact quote. It was about 20 seconds long, but it was like, okay, you have to be a football player and you have to want it and you have to, and he challenged his effort. Now, I heard later that, that the assistant coach there, the offensive coordinator, got in trouble for that, saying, we don't do that. Let's not create that stuff at the podium. But when the head coach does it, he's, and the other thing though, Evan, it's mid-August, and they got a bunch of talented young players and new players out there, like that Mark Perry, who's actually lines up as a safety. But with some of the stuff, I still haven't figured out exactly what Gannon's doing with that defense. But he made some big plays the other night. They got to get a look at these guys, so they know what Keyshawn Nixon is capable of. So it does. So I think you're right. I think he's week one. He's still out there lining up against Justin Jefferson and whoever else the Vikings line up. But it's also it's a challenge to everybody in that room.
Staying with the corner position, Brandon Cisse, you mentioned him. He just looks like an NFL football player. The way he carries himself, the way he moves around on the field, he just looks like an NFL player.
Talks like one too. He's 21 going on 26. And as humble as can be, asks a lot of good questions, thoughtful, reflective, and smooth. Was he 6'1", I think? But man, he just glides along. He learns with every rep. He learns with every rep. You can see him learning with every rep. So yeah, it's going to be exciting to see what he does. Now, quite frankly, I don't have enough examples or plays to see how physical he can be. But I'm pretty convinced that he's pretty smart at coverage. They're going after him all the time. They'll send Christian Watson at him, Matthew Golden, because hey, this is what it's going to be like, kid. But he's making a case to be a rookie. And remember, the last time they had a veteran playing corner on one side, and they brought in a rookie on the other side, was Tremont Williams and Sam Shields. And how'd that turn out? Well, they went to a Super Bowl.
And both of them made some pretty big plays to get there, too. So,
yeah.
Jump into offense. Mike Clemens, NFL Radio, Wisconsin Radio Network, Bill Michaels Show Network, WRJN, Civic Media, wearer of many hats, I think it's safe to say. Offensive line-wise, they gave this money to Banks. Now he apparently has tendonitis in his knee and not really practicing yet at all. Belton is looking more like they want him to be a tackle again. What are your thoughts on the offensive line?
I think the surprise in that story, Evan, on offensive line is the improvement of Jacob Monk, who's been with the team now a couple of years, a lower draft pick at center.
All in the Viking game last year when he started.
It was a so-called meaningless game for the Packers. They'd already clinched. They knew they were going to the postseason. So they started him at center, and he did a pretty good job. Unfortunately, they got into the posts, and then he, suffered a broken fibula, I believe. So, that was rather traumatic for him. But he showed up, and he's classic offensive lineman, usually out of Green Bay. It takes a couple of years, and then suddenly it clicks in. The technique is more consistent, where you put your hands for pass protection, where you are in power blocking. So the fact is, he's got a lot of reps at right guard and looking pretty good. And then there's this Jagger Burton out of Kentucky, who, man, he looks like Green Bay Packer offensive lineman material. Just a rookie, but smart and good technique. The only thing about him is looking at him the other day at practice, number 52. He's not as big as you'd like. He's a little bit shorter. He's one of the shorter guys out there, but his footwork is so good. He can plant. He seems to be able to get good push, good technique underneath. That if Aaron Banks is going to go, there's a good chance that he could be your starting left guard right there next to Jordan Morgan at left tackle. Oh, Jordan Morgan, man. He whiffed on a couple of plays in that Bears playoff game. Remember, Sweat got to Jordan Love on a third down late in the game, which got the Bears the ball back on another scoring drive in the playoff loss. But one of the thing I've noticed about Jordan Morgan now taking over at left tackle for Rasheed Walker, who's moved on to, what was it, the Panthers? I think he signed with. I haven't seen a guy in one-on-ones at Packers training camp that in pass protection puts guys on the carpet. I mean, his arms are so powerful. I was watching him Sunday morning, and he's supposed to be doing pass protection, and he's keeping the guy on the outside, but his hands are so strong. Sometimes he could take some, not all, but some of these defensive linemen and do this kind of move, and they end up on the ground, and he's just standing there looking at them because they're like falling forward. There's two guys that I saw early in camp as rookies years ago. And it's one that lines up against Clay Matthews. And he's in pass protection on one-on-ones in training camp, just like this week. And, Clay Matthews said, all right, give me another shot. So he lines up again. And, he's going around this kid at left tackle, can't get around him. And he goes, one more time. And they snap, it goes around. And then Clay gets so ticked off, he takes his chin strap off and spikes his helmet. It was Bakhtiari. And ever since then, Bakhtiari became the left tackle. I mean, he literally won the job that day. Like Clay Matthews can't get around him on a one-on-one. Maybe we should give him a look. And he never left that position until the ACL. And another one, I can show you. I can prove this one with Twitter. It's like, okay, it's only the second day of camp, but man, I really like this one kid, number 50, and his footwork. So we'll see. That was Zach Tom. So I'm not an expert at this stuff, but I have the opportunity to just watch it day after day after day and watch what things like, that Clifton and Tosher would do, and then watch what, Bakhtiari would do. And it's when I watch film of other guys in the league, but there's a certain look where you can say, oh, look, no one's getting around this guy. Look at how quickly he can respond. Look at how he even, is able to quickly answer when they shoot two guys at him, and how he picks the first one on the inside and still delays him and can chip the other guy, and, in a pass protection situation. So, yeah, now I'm starting to see what Luke Buckus has talked about is the power that Jordan Morgan has had so far at left tackle.
Yeah, and I truly think that if they didn't have the injuries did last year along the offensive line, I do think he ends up starting a left tackle last year over Walker, personally. But unfortunately, with injuries with Zach Tom and Banks and whoever else, they just couldn't afford to put him over there because they needed him to play other positions. But I think he has nicely found his home. I know, got to get you out of here quickly soon, but who's really stood out to you who we haven't talked about yet? Who's really stood out to you in camp so far?
Not many, quite frankly, because there's so many qualified new guys. And I was trying to think, like, have I kind of lost my eye a little bit on looking for these guys, like the undrafted guy that is like, hey, well, let's keep an eye on this guy. And it clicked to me. For so many years, I mean, I've covered the team full time, 21 years, 22 years. Um, I was looking at these huge draft class, and now I'm looking at free agents. You understand? So I can't tell you, oh boy, Zaire Franklin, he's a known commodity. You know, I can tell you that Tyron Hopper looks pretty good, but he's been around for a couple of years. So that's the part that's, I suppose, could be sort of exciting for fans. But in terms of someone, Will Shepard is a guy that they had that I was actually told by one of the front office guys to keep an eye on, because I actually made a comment to him. I said, "Where do you get these guys?" And he says, "What do you mean?" I said, "Like this Hicks." And that they had two or three of these guys wearing jerseys in the 80s that were wide receivers making these unbelievable catches. And I knew then that they probably, maybe they had a chance of making the practice squad, but they had so many guys in camp that could catch the football. And I was nailing it off. And then he said, "Yeah, or what about 82?" I said, "Oh, Will Shepard. Yeah." So then he goes, they, stack him on the practice squad, and then they bring him back this year. And after they've got Sky Moore back there, who looks great, who Gudikins has already said, yeah, he's going to be a nice addition to our roster. I told Sky Moore, hey, Gudikins said that. And it's like, we don't normally get that. But they got Will Shepard back there, taking returns. That's a guy that they like, and that maybe that'll be a name that you'll look for that will either make the roster or practice squad again. But yeah, those are some of the guys I'm excited about.
And I know last year was last year, but I do got to ask you this. Last year obviously didn't end the way anybody wanted it to. Players, fans, coaches, front office, general manager, reporters. It didn't end that way anyone wanted it to. I think I could safely say that. Do you think there is any possibility that policy was actually considering pulling the plug and moving on, or was LaFleur and Goody going to sign extensions no matter what?
I don't know, not according to what Ed Policy said. Uh, months later after that decision was made, and he said, I can't believe that people thought we were going to let those guys go. Look at the record they've had. One of the things that was convincing about that was that when I talked to policy, he's kind of tight. He's not Mark Murphy showing up, to banquets and luncheons left and right. And he's a little more guarded and a little more scheduled in his messages. But one of the things he'll remind you of is I was there when we hired Matt LaFleur. Okay. I've been here through the whole story. I've been here 12 years. So I know why these decisions were made and how we got to where we are now. He was there when they let go of Mike McCarthy and the reasons why. So, he feels like it's in a way it's kind of his hire as well. I also think the most compelling argument he makes as to why I wasn't going to look is because A, you're going to be firing a coach that will have a new job before he gets to his car in the parking lot, which is what they say around here. And secondly, there was 10 teams that changed coaches. And in terms of the available candidates to replace LaFleur with, for what? And that from what he sees from the roster, we're closer than you think. Why would you reset and go back to year one with the program? So let's try and make a couple of more adjustments here and there and see what it is. But that losing the last 5 games, that was brutal. I don't have the actual answer, but I had a very good source say that there was one player, I think it was after the Ravens game. And so the question, it was off the record, but a player was like, so where do you go from here? Well, we're probably going to lose next week, and then we'll lose the one after that. And then, we'll go home. Like, I mean, and it can't be all based just because Micah Parsons went down, but there was something going on at that point. Um, and there's some players that wanted it out and left in free agency. So I can tell you, I don't get into that rah rah sell it stuff. I'm trying to push that aside as much as I can. But this group has been the most open and talkative training camp group. Now we're getting into guys who are getting banged up, and we're getting closer to roster cut down. So that'll get tighter. That'll get harder to talk to guys. But it's kumbaya here right now. These guys are all getting along and open and addressing. And Micah Parsons is a huge influence that way, whether he's active or not. So in that way, they may have gotten rid of a couple of characters who felt that they were being underutilized or not used the right way. And maybe they're trying to still filter that out as we head into this game against the Cardinals or the Broncos and then the Cardinals.
Yeah. Well, two final things, and then we'll wrap up. So Tucker Kraft, his contract is going to get signed. My guess is that week between the end of training camp and week one. And then for the Bronco game, you brought that up. Anything in particular you're watching for in that Bronco game?
Yeah, I got to watch more defensive line this time because as I've mentioned, I've spent a lot of time now in the last week, once we got the pads on, things like that going, to see what the questions are on offensive line. So, they feel confident. Warren Brinson has really improved. And I was talking to him, I said, man, your handwork. And he smiled like, bingo, you touched on it. He worked with a martial arts guy for 4 months in the off season, and you can tell. I mean, he said, you're flipping dudes like a cheese omelet. He laughed at that. But so that's a guy that's ascending. And then Carl Brooks, and then to see what Devontae Wyatt can offer coming back from his injury. So that's the one thing I'll be focused on coming into this Broncos game. As for Tucker Kraft, he's right on schedule. He'll be limited in snaps so that they hope that he can play 2/3 of the game against the Vikings. It'll be through the early part of the season so they don't push it. I asked LaFleur, I said, I realized this a year ago at this time. You had questions the offensive line, Elton Jenkins, and then your quarterback has a tendon snapped in his thumb. He had to have surgery and he couldn't, practice. Malik Willis got all these snaps for the rest of the preseason. And yet those first 2 games of the season last year against the Vikings and Commanders were some of the best performances you had all season. How did you do that? And he says, we cut the playbook down. I'm throwing so much at these guys right now. Okay. But, once you get to your roster, now you've got 2 weeks to prepare. Okay. Here's 60 plays, not 400. And then you rep those. And that's how they got to look so slick in those games against, rather it was the Lions and the Commanders last year to get off to that good start.
Well, Mike, I know you got to go. I appreciate you jumping on. It's been a minute since we've got the opportunity to talk, and look forward to talking to you some more outside of this platform as well. But appreciate all the work you do, and I appreciate all the content that you bring us each and every day that you're up at Packer training camp.
Always good to talk to you, Evan. Thank you.
Yep. Have a good one. So that was Mike Clemens as I gave his what he does NFL radio on Sirius, Wisconsin Radio Network, the Bill Michaels Show Network, WRJN, and Civic Media. So as I mentioned, wearer of many hats, and he is one of the best in the business to do it, and also one of the nicest guys in the business to do it. I know Mike Clemens for quite a while now, and he is just one of the nicest people you'd ever meet. So appreciate him spending his part of his Monday evening where he's been working all day, giving us great Packer content to come on and talk some Green Bay Packers with me. It is definitely always fun to talk with him. And normally I talk with him, just shooting the stuff, but get it on my podcast to talk some Packers is, I'm just quite happy to do so. So, the Packers do have a game coming up on Friday. As I stated, I won't be able to watch it live, but I will be able to catch up on it later on. And things that I'm looking for. And I talked about last week things I'm looking for in week 1 preseason. And I think it went pretty well. So things I'm looking forward to in week 2 of preseason. And like Clemens, like Mike, defensive line. I want to get a good look at the defensive line. I've been, like him, watching the offensive line a lot because I think that's where most of the attention is. I've been watching the defensive backfield a lot because I think that's where a lot of the attention belongs at the moment. But I am definitely going to be watching the defensive line and the linebackers. Edger and Cooper, Zaire Franklin, if they play, Hooper, watch him. Those are the positions I'm going to watch. And then see how Trace Mack does his second game. See how he does his second go-around. He went on the road to Pittsburgh, a traditionally tough place to kick. Now, granted, it's August and it's not that bad yet, but he kicked pretty well. Now he's going to whatever they're calling it these days. I'm going to call it Mile High. He's going out to Denver, kicking out there. He might nail a 60, 62, 63, 64-yard field goal potentially if they give him a chance. Because he's got a big leg, and the ball travels in Denver big time. So appreciate Mike again for jumping on. Big thank you to him. Big thank you for those watching live. Make sure to tune in next week when I recap preseason week 2, get you ready for week 3, talk some Badger football. I'm working on trying to get a guest on, talk some Badger football next week. I'm going to get him on potentially to do that and get you caught up on hopefully some good Brewer stuff. They got a good weekend series against the Dodgers after not doing very well against the Padres, and now they return home tomorrow to take on the Minnesota Twins, which I will be at that game cheering the Brewers on. But big thank you to everybody. Podcast version goes live, or the audio version goes live tomorrow at 8 a.m. Make sure to check it out. Like, subscribe, follow, whatever the platform does, please do so. Until next week, talk to you all later.
Wisconsin.